Oh,
This is
snap.
Speaker Damon, Yate, Bene, everyone out there. See, callers, it looks like I have about 5 delegates on the line, so let's wait a little bit longer so we can go ahead and get started.
Good morning, Speaker and Council delegates. This is Shondine Parrish, Miss Navajo Nation.
Good morning, Miss Navajo. How are you doing today?
Doing good. Looks like good weather today.
Yep. I hope it rains some more. Miss Navajo and everybody else that's on the line, colleagues, let's wait a little bit longer. Right? Trying to make sure we get a quorum here. So we have about 6 delegates online right now. And after that, we can go ahead and move to roll call. But again, good morning to everyone out there, everybody that's logged in on either YouTube, Facebook, or Vimeo. Good morning to the Navajo Nation. Good morning to everyone listening in from across the World Wide Web. Cat, for being part of these discussions in our Navajo Nation Council summer session this week. I know that today we're going to continue on receiving reports. Just for clarity, we're going to start off with a report from the Office of the Control.
Thank you, Speaker Seth Damon. Go Chief Justice Joanne Jane. Ado Nikia Bishba. Justice Anna Yego. Big Idje Di Glees. Nikia Dene. Yan Dacha A. Yeda Ned Ango in innocent. Since on then a delia constant costing sagi na hat eight ada nafi bits on ba ahalya. Ado Nikia Dene Aspo. Nila ke dish Bohol Jesus Christ digit bed a cod le. Ik not any adult. Speaker Seth Damon, thank you for having me this morning.
Thank you very much for the invocation, Ms. Navajo. I thank you for everything that you do for the nation, and thank you for your advocacy too as well. Have a blessed day. That colleagues, let's go ahead and move on down. Receiving report from the Bureau of Indian Affairs. We're moving on down to receiving financial report from the controller. So we'll go ahead and start off with there. Madam Controller, I do believe, colleagues, there was Madam Controller sent out her report yesterday evening at 8:48 p.m. Two of those, one was just a report and the other one was the exhibits. I know at that time colleagues were still having trouble with the email. So if anybody did not receive those, we're going to send those out again here right now. So we can go make sure that everybody has that. Madam Controller, if you're on the line, the floor is yours.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Oh.
Okay. So time, keeping track of time. Jaya Perling Kirk Auto Controller Jaya is Jananish Auto Slinigaya Twitch evening Slin I Napa team my day skiing that's a Chado Tapahe Dashanal Auto you see in a Shagi Aya kin that's a chi hodye ade a yutinasha. Auto the con Aya controllers report the Kinahoji Zik at Conde or Ashby a co a Shahato the Consaho IT speaker, other members of the 24th Navajo Nation Council. So first thing I will talk about is the Navajo Nation audit on Naha fi Kujida initiative based on Dehiki Natka for the fiscal year 2019, the last few months, pandemic, normally the nation's financial audit and also the single audit are normally completed. The single audit is usually uploaded to the federal clearinghouse at the end of June. So although because of the pandemic, the federal side, the clearinghouse, you have up until 6 months to upload and complete your audits and upload. On the single audit, as you are aware of, those have to do with the nation's external funds. In terms of the financial audit, in terms of the bondholders that we have for the nation's 60 million go be naka hajil. So a audit bondholders, a clinici, a ade, ya. We have up until 60 days from June 30th to complete our financial audit. So that's at the end of August. So before the pandemic, we got a lot of the both single audit and the financial audit completed. So the Benata in a few weeks ago. So we're targeting the next few weeks to get these two audits completed so that we can satisfy the bondholders as well as upload the single audit to the federal clearinghouse. So there's just a few things that we were inquiring last week, a couple of programs that we needed to get some of those documents requests done and so forth. So in the next few weeks, we should be able to go through, do a work session with Budget and Finance, and then also prepare to make our presentation with Budget and Finance. And then normally the Nabikiati also, we present the audit reports in front of the Nabikiati. Although in terms of the budget process, before the 24th Navajo Nation Council deliberates on next year's fiscal year budget, then the audit has to be approved. So those are some of the key dates and deadlines and things that need to happen. So in terms of both the financial and the single audit act, we should be having that completed in the next, I would say, two weeks, and get the process going. We did submit a written controller's report. As far as based on the data. The other thing I just wanted to say on the CARES Act fund, in the last few weeks, as everybody is aware, between May 6th, June 16th, June 18th, federal government based on law, and that's a total of $714,189,631.47. In terms of we did immediately put those funds into a money market account. So at invest you have to follow some of the federal guidelines because they're federal financial assistance. So the money market is something that we can maximize our return given what we are able to invest in. Based on the federal government, they say it's out invested in the short term. So based on the invest daily. So in terms of this CARES Act, based on the first reporting, that one audit treasury they gave us some guidance last week. Although the first deadline for reporting was Friday. So Friday, we did send a report back to Treasury, essentially because we have not expended any dollars. Our report reflects that information. Although the next reporting in October 13th, that would be the next quarterly reporting. Although they also will want additional information based on not only the June activity for which was due on Friday, but also anything and everything on the transactions for which we expend these dollars up to 9/21/20. So the Treasury will be asking for us to upload information into a portal. If Treasury, based on those reports, wants to come in to review our expenditures and anything else, they can do that. So there were some legislations in the last few weeks. So currently right now, we're awaiting OMB to set up the fund itself, and then also what's needed is the budgets stemming from those legislations. Will make payments as to what the legislations have so that's what I have on the CARES Act funds. I will mention that there is a special duty pay to be administered by our office. Again, we would have to do the expenditure plan. One thing that my office is working on, in accordance to CARES Act, Auto Treasury Guidance, we have to set up a payroll support program. So we've been working on that. The other piece of the payroll support program, it helps the special duty pay, which is in essence our hazard pay. So we're setting that up. It's pretty much done. Some of the things that are happening with the special duty pay, I see that there's another report coming up. So I also sent out a written report on that yesterday. So special duty pay right now, the sooner we set up the business units and programs and departments are able to charge, the better. And I think that was the reason why the legislation because right now, once we put in the special duty pay, auto departments and programs had to use their own current budget to get requests into our office. So because we have to process some of those with the program's existing budget. If we use the CARES money, to basically reimburse and then use the CARES Act funds. We are getting a lot of requests, and a lot of the requests we have to send back, because the way that works is you have to have actually worked and to get the special duty pay. So sometimes the request is not based on the actual hours worked. So we have to get those things corrected. And so not only do we have some programs and departments who they want to get their special duty paid, they may not have the budget, but also there's scenarios where they do submit their documents, but they are not, we're going back in time. So when you go back in time, then you have your request must be, it must be based on your actual hours worked. So we have to send some of those documents back. So the other thing that I would like to mention real quick is our office in working with DOJ, when they were part of the donation, I guess they still are, as part of the donation branch with the command group. We worked, my office has worked on setting up an online donation page. So we were able to work with the nation's merchant provider to do an online payment mechanism. And just so you guys know, the ability for us to put that together not only helped the donation side, and I just want to say in terms of, as of July 16th, the payments that were collected just through that online payment donation page was a little over 2 million. And so the reason why I mention it is we are trying to work the same way with all these payments that the nation can be getting through the same mechanism. For example, I believe we went live yesterday with credit services. Some of you are aware that credit services, we're charged with a home loan program and then also a personal loan program. So during these times, we're told not to, we're told to socially distance and so forth. When you go grocery shopping and so forth, I mean, you can do online ordering, you can do payments just by your phone without having to touch, nobody uses cash, those types of things. So as of Monday, I believe we went live with credit services ability to accept payment through the website. So those are things we're doing as a result of setting up a donation page. So for example, there are other programs within the nation where we can do the same thing as far as online payment. Our credit services has been working on that, and they've achieved the ability for payments to happen through our website. So I just wanted to mention that. So once we get that completed, then we're going to be working in other areas of the nation to try to get those such payment abilities in place. So Otto, in terms of the other thing I just wanted to mention, I know I've been getting questions on it, the UUFB. So we're working on that. Normally around this time, we are through our audit. We start with the fund balance that gets audited. I have been looking at some preliminary numbers, so that should be coming out shortly. The way it works is we work on a budget basis. We compare what we budgeted or projected on let's say our revenues throughout the year. Then we match it up with what actually comes in. If actual is more than our projections, then all of those things go down to the bottom line. UUSB. So sometimes we work with, throughout the year, we work with the unaudited numbers. So during this time, we usually try to get our final numbers and so forth. So I believe with the UUSB, in terms of this UUSB that's going to come out, I think we won't feel the effects of some of the things that are happening in the market I think later on, probably at the end of the calendar year, we'll feel those effects of the volatile oil market and so forth. But for now, the ones that we will calculate here soon, I think, we're not going to feel those effects. So that's good news on that end, Otto, but keep in mind, the changes that will happen by the end of the calendar year, we may feel those effects in terms of the oil industry. The other thing I just want to mention, in terms of the budget, we did the revenue projections, Otto. We do have a budget timeline. Some of the questions we have would be, given everything else, and then Otto cares money and so there's a lot of things going on, given that we also have a pandemic. We have rolling schedules. Our office is essential. We've been working throughout the shutdown, processing payments, processing payroll. So, I just want to mention that last. I think I have like a minute left. I just want to touch base on the Navajo Nation's portfolio. So the first, back in May, the market, as most of you know, has been pretty volatile. There are times when we have unprecedented slips in the market, and also for example, the oil, price per barrel, and also the short-term interest rates. Those things all tank essentially, and the markets have been going up and down, volatile. However, in the last quarter, I just want to say all that volatility and the losses we've taken, mostly in the equity market, has all come back up. So in terms of the end of May, the Master Trust had a market value balance of $3.7 billion. And so our fiscal year to date, we are in the positive of 2.7%. And for the quarter, because everything was volatile, and then for the quarter, it came back up about close to 11% for the third quarter. So I just want to report that. The same thing on the defined benefit plan. It's $953 million at the end of May, and then the total fiscal year to date, it's been 2.2% return. For the third quarter, the return was over 12%. So as you can see, we have volatility in the last quarter, but the current quarter, a lot of it is all coming back. So that's usually just how markets operate. And as you can imagine, with COVID-19, everything's volatile. Even just questions on if there's going to be a second wave, if there's going to be a vaccination, all of those play out in the marketplace. So
Thank you, Madam Controller, for the report there. Let me go ahead and go. My colleagues, is there a motion to accept the Controller's report this morning?
Motion, Delegate Stewart.
Motion by Charles Newman. Second by Madam Chair Charles Newman. That, we go ahead and go to the floor. Honorable Keon Begay. Okay, the floor is yours.
Information.
Speaker, Speaker Kellen.
You do have some sort
Yes, hold on. Colleagues, can you please mute your phone?
of research now. Yeah.
Honorable Otto, so I can hear you. Okay, with that, Che, Honorable Keon Begay, the floor is yours.
Speaker Kellen, I have several questions for the controller. Good morning, Shanada. Appreciate the report. Can I specifically request for a report to the RDC Resource and Development Committee? Because a lot of these funding that comes in relates to our oversight, the revenue, minerals, coal, and the first one requests a slot on this, and I apologize for overstepping my chair, RDC chairs, or the RDC members in Dandinigi. But it is directly should request on this, specifically a report to the RDC sometimes in the coming weeks. Telecommunication. There's been a report that you don't know the bayada, and I believe we're trying to expand out, and I don't want these to be an obstacle to expand out. And I believe that should be just an internal investigation, and specifically who are. But what is the potential that you could maybe give us a rough estimate in expanding out telecommunication service onto the Navajo Nation? What is the potential revenue? But we're not really should be focusing on how much money that we'll be getting regarding the telecommunication, but we want to really focus on expanding and having cell service available across the Navajo Nation for Navajo people. So that's the bottom line. But what is the potential income from that particular sector? The permanent trust fund, could you be able to provide a balance? But on page 7, Master Trust Fund and Retirement Performance Unaudited, Bakaki Gi 8 Baka 2.6. So I'm assuming it's 2 billion and then 648 479 988. I'm assuming, and how much of it have we lost or gained during this up and down of the stock market? How much of it is really being utilized for the service, the income, interest income? Or if not, most of it that's it. So those are some areas that I believe we should need provide an updated balance. Veterans Trust Fund. It does say 184 976 748 so that's the correct amount. So that's the other area that I'm want to give some report back to our local veterans organization, because just a matter of keeping our local veterans updated because I believe they're not being given sufficient or updated information. And veterans program again was considered as non-essential, which I continue to oppose. I believe that our veterans should have been one of the priorities of the Navajo Nation to be that the program should be running as an essential program. Although some funding, specific amount, how much is still sitting at CPMD within the Division of Community Development. So, Ecuador, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
I'll reserve my time.
Honorable Calambay, you do not have any more time. That, moving on down. Honorable Halona.
Thank you, Speaker. Good morning, Ms. Kirk and my colleagues. Speaker Damon, thank you. We used to get reports. I think I got 2 reports that had included every program that you had, especially on the Navajo Nation. I was wondering why I haven't received a full report of all the funding that we have with balances and for the month of, I don't know, the last one I got was probably last summer, I imagine. And I'd like to see those reports, but we haven't seen one. I haven't seen one come out from your office lately. And that shows all the balances with all the accounts for every department that we have. So that was one question I have. And then the second question I have is, do you have a preliminary amount on what we have today and that's going to be coming out in our UUFB? It's already time for the next budget season to get started, and I think that's only like 2 or 3 months away. I was wondering what that, if you have a preliminary amount that you could share with us right now. I'm sure the audit should be completed by now. If they haven't, they're behind. And of course, everything is behind because of the pandemic. So I just had those 2 questions, Ms. Kirk. I appreciate it. And thank you, Speaker. I reserve my time.
Okay, thank you, Honorable Halona. Reserve your time at 3 minutes, 25 seconds. Madam Controller, I'm going to go to one more individual and then I'll come back to you. So with that, let me go on down to Honorable Vice Chair Walker.
Thank you, Speaker, for this time. Although members of the 24th Navajo Nation Council, although our staff, although listeners and meeting participants, appreciate the time given here this morning. Although Madam Controller, so I have a few questions here that I wanted to ask regarding special duty pay. Special duty pay, but not initial. The front lines, frontline workers, frontline, first line responders to the Hanimigi. Although the cost it's definitely internet kabandat could that bench baka angel kota tato benjo tatna hano that ida zolia front line so first responder ida bahazun je is inch just what bedeniche ida zut ya special duty pay han enigi e beba hoti kwaigen na ticket je hollo ko ado see that regular employees would so we have regular employees. Before the pandemic, everyone was supposedly a regular employee. So those employees, some of them continue to be on duty, just doing their normal or regular tour duty, being there to handle calls or serve the public, but not deal with the COVID patients. Regular employee, especially when they are on duty during government shutdown. So regular employees that are working during the shutdown, but are not frontline or first responders, do they qualify for the special duty? Although the last question is we have federally funded programs. Some of them, most of them contracts, 93-638 programs. You can say like social services or CHR. The special duty pay coming from the CARES Act funds. Speaker do Madam Controller. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Vice Chair Walker. Good to hear your voice this morning. Moving on back to Madam Controller. I think we have some questions from McKeon Begay, Honorable Halona, and Vice Chair Walker. So I'll come back to you.
Speaker, Kodon Daidosh Kidiki, Shinale, Delegate Kialan Begay, Kodota Ashigo, Naidis Kids. So, the first one, a request for a report to RDC regarding certain things they have oversight. I just wanted to say regarding that request, we can do those reports. The other thing is on Friday morning for the last few months, my office and myself, we've been making reports to Budget and Finance, and the reason why was with the market volatility, a lot of the impact and the activity that is going on in the marketplace, especially as to oil and gas industry and how it impacts the Navajo Nation. It's very important how that is playing out in the marketplace. There's a couple of things that how it impacts the Navajo Nation regarding the current fiscal year for Jishigi, because we were working on this current fiscal year budget. We have assumptions. We never thought that we'd be in a pandemic situation and the markets would be acting the way they are. We did those projections. Current fiscal year, we have to keep an eye on it because our assumptions obviously didn't include a pandemic. So on a weekly basis, we've been keeping Budget and Finance informed as to the market volatility, especially in the oil industry, because there was a possibility at one point that we may have a deficit. So Ebony scheduled those weekly updates. So, but the market has rebounded, and there's other key factors at play that kind of made up for that concern. So as of today, we are well on our way to meet those projections. The other thing that how it impacts the Navajo Nation is next fiscal year, a revenue projection, Nadelia. So some of the things that we have to make assumption on is this pandemic, so how is it going to impact the oil industry? Because a lot of the nation's general fund revenues come from the energy sector, the oil and gas, and so forth. So how does this play out for in the future, next fiscal year, whether, how we project our revenues out. So those are some of the things we had to address in recent months. So we certainly can keep the Resource and Development Committee informed on some of those as well. In terms of the telecommunication, I'm not sure. I think the question is what kind of expanded self-service and what the potential revenues are. I believe if we're talking about lease rentals and so forth, I think certainly that helps the nation in terms of its general fund revenues. I'm not too sure if AIC so in terms of expanding cell phone coverage, I think with that comes the additional need for rental and those types of agreements. Although in terms of services, whether that puts more money in the Navajo Nation's coffers, so unless I'm not making myself clear or I'm not understanding the question, we can let me know so we can answer some of your questions on that. Auto permanent fund. So in terms of in recent months, there was volatility. Keep in mind that our investment portfolio is a balanced investment portfolio. So early on in February, mainly in March, most of the stock market was hit, basically. So that's just on the equity market. The nation does invest in other assets, your fixed income, real estate, some of the other types of assets. So the nation does diversify in that sense, so that if one section of the market, for example, the equity market, is taking a hit, then it kind of balances out because we're invested in various assets. So when this type of volatility happens, you can't just look at it in the short term. You have to kind of ride out this volatility, knowing that you're in it for the long term. So I just want to make sure in terms of that is the reason why when I present on the portfolio, we look at it from the standpoint of a fiscal year to date type information, because it'll go up and down, and then we've already made up for the gains from the last quarter. So if you just look at just this quarter, as I think the percentage was I know it's 10% on the defined benefit, but it's also 11% for the master trust just for the quarter. But that, 11% makes up for the returns from the previous quarter. So as you can imagine, the previous quarter we were down, and then we came back up. But on a fiscal year basis, we're ahead by 2%. So, Otto, when you look at the report on my written report, I know these are small numbers, but you can see it's broken out. The master trust is broken out by the various trust funds. And so you'll see that at least as the permanent fund, you'll see the balance just on that fund. It's a little over 2.4 billion, as you pointed out, I believe. And then it gives you the fiscal year to date return, which is 2.67%. Otto, right below that, is the interest income. So with that, it's that is the information right below that has to do with the gaming. As you know that we have an investment in our gaming enterprise and in the form of a loan. And so in the report that I passed out, so it does say, the permanent fund participates in that investment as well. So and then at the bottom, it does talk about the aggregate balance. So the aggregate is about 2.5 billion, and that makes up 68% of our master trust fund. So that's what we have. Also, I just want to make it clear that we use the permanent fund income. We pay fees out of the income. We pay for the investment section. We also, because of the 5-year plan, we also pay or set aside the 5-year plan project before we get to an excess permanent fund income. And we also reinvest 5% of the income as well. That's another requirement that we do before we calculate the excess income. That excess income is usually used, and we usually get the audited numbers, and we use the excess income for the following year budgeting to help subsidize the budget. So for fiscal year 2019, we did have an amount that I believe was 25 million that can be used for the fiscal year 2021 budget. So that's from the final year of the 5-year plan project. So and I just want to say, in recent years, because of the market has not has been on the up since 2008. Some of the indicators have come down due to the pandemic. So the Navajo Nation is used to making the income that it makes from the permanent fund. So the Veterans Trust Fund. So in the last page where it breaks down the funds, the Veterans Fund shows that before you take into account the gaming loan, you'll see that the balances as of the end of May 31st, the balance is a little over 160 million. And so, although the return, each one of these funds have different, what we call asset allocations, depending on how these, the income are used and so forth. So the return on the Veterans Trust Fund for fiscal year to date is 6.18%. So that's a pretty good return. Although they do participate in the gaming loan as well. And so the, you'll see that about 4.8 million is the balance with the gaming loan, and you'll see what income it makes off the gaming loan as well. Although if you take the investment as well as the gaming loan portion of it all together, it's about 164.5 million. Is the balance. In general, regarding the income, it's about with the changes that have been made this past fiscal year, the amount that was budgeted for that portion for the veterans program, because there's two numbers that get budgeted, one for the housing and one for the program itself. So for this past fiscal year, the amount budgeted was specifically for the program was a little over. Okay, we're checking on that, but what we do is because these are trust funds, we have to get the audited income numbers, and so there's usually a time lag of which fiscal year we have income numbers that we use, and so while I'm getting the Veterans Trust number, you had a question on the funding CPMD. We know that.
Citizen funding.
Oh. $200,000. We're looking on that. We do know that approximately 100 million was appropriated, and there were timing to those projects. And there's a lot of there's some certain projects that reshuffle between the various 3 years of activity. Although I believe CPMD has an administrative cost of 200,000, and I think your question was some of the balances on those. Just wanted to say that we try our best. It can get a cumbersome process to get all the numbers together, which we periodically do. And we have to work with the program to get that done. Do you have anything? The other thing I would while we're looking those numbers up regarding the Hudson portfolio, shoot. The CSN fund, as you can see on the last page of your report, I can't see it. We have 556 million as a balance. Keep in mind these balances don't reflect the fund balance. There's this is the market value balance. Although when we do the financial statement, then we take all that is set aside, because some of these, let's say you we approve them to be spent on projects, but the projects aren't ready, so they're not drawn down yet. So there will be differences between the market value and the fund balances. I just want to point that out. And regarding the fund balance for the CSN, so we have a market value balance of 556 million. But if you look at my report on page 3, we have the fund balance of $392 $392,844,129 as of June 30th. So we can get back to you on your question on the CPMD. We don't have that right off the bat. And then also going back to your question on the Veterans Trust for fiscal year 20, the amount allocated, income?
Budgeted, yes.
Okay, the amount budgeted for Veterans Trust for the program itself was approximately 4.8 million. It's 4,857,500, and then the amount budgeted for the home was 3,897,470. So that has a calculation. It's been changed in recent years, and we're using those new calculation methods. So and we can respond on the funding CPMD, and if we can get some clarification on the communication, maybe I didn't answer it. Isha, we can respond back on that in writing. Auto, Delegate Halona, I believe.
Reversion report is not part of the control district.
So essentially, we do have a what we call a reversion report, which I think is what you're asking about. We periodically put that on our website, and we have the fiscal year year-end reversion report. We call it the reversion report. It's basically a status report of various active grants and so forth, whether it's federal funds, state funds, 638 funds, and so forth. We have the detailed report, and generally we get that out every quarter. So, we haven't done a detailed report, although we still keep track of it. So if you turn to, we do have a summary of the transactions and activity. And so if you look at my report in Exhibit D and E and F, those are the 3 pages that gives you a summary. So you won't see the detail under each program, but you'll see that, like for example, Exhibit D talks about the federal fund report as of the end of May 31st, and you'll see it does reflect the budget, the actual expenses that are expended, the encumbrances, and the budget balance left. So that gives you in summary format what's going on regarding some of those activity under the federal funds, and it's broken down by division and so forth. So like you'll see Division of Social Services, let's say they have 212 million in a budget. They've expended 105, and they've encumbered a little over 6 million, and so they have 101 million of budget balance that's not, that's available. And the same thing with Division of Transportation, 247 million is their budget. They've expended 70. They encumbered 54 million, and they have 123 million that is not reflected.
Mr. Roger.
Okay, all right. Okay. I'm not sure if that's not part of my report. I think somebody needs to mute their phone.
Sorry, Honorable Freeland, we can hear you. Go ahead, no control.
Okay. Otto, in terms of the state fund report, which is Exhibit E, it'll give you the same information. Only these are state-funded programs that are running through the various our various divisions and departments. So, for example, the biggest one I see on here is Division of Community Development. They have a budget of about close to 21 million. They've only expended 1.7 million. They have encumbrances of 6.8, and they have an available budget of 12.3. So that at least gives you a summary information as by divisions and departments. And the same thing in the next page, Exhibit F, that tells you it's broken down with our 638 funds, whether it's from IHS, which is on top, and it actually breaks it down by, for instance, on IHS, Department of Health, Division of Public Safety, Division of Social Services. So our active BIA IHS, for IHS report, we have a revised budget of close to 300 million. Our actual expense is 166 million. Encumbrance is 1.6 million. We have a budget balance of 130 million. So same thing with the BIA. We have 911 million of 638 funds that is available. We've expended 518 million. We have encumbrances of 32 million, and we have available of 360. So that gives you the same information as that detailed information you were asking about. So the other thing about your other question about a preliminary amount for UUSB, I generally don't like to give that out, especially in light of very close to when I will be issuing the report. So it will be just, a matter of days that I can come up with the UUSB calculation. Just so you know what all goes into the UUSB, we have to, at this point in time, we have to anticipate and finalize the audit adjustments. We have certain adjustments that are required by governmental auditing standards and so forth, and we have to take those audit adjustment into consideration. And so there are a number of things that goes into the calculation. So so I should have that here shortly. Again, I have preliminary numbers. I generally don't want to give that out until I make it official. So in terms of special duty pay, Delegate Walker, eligible, and then who is the frontline regular employee, federal funded program. So in terms of the way the special duty pay works, we generally it is called a hazard pay, but the way the Navajo Nation set theirs up, and it wasn't my office, it was actually DPM, Department of Personnel Management, who took the lead because they pretty much, there is an authorization to have hazard pay under the personnel policies manual that's existing, that covers the executive branch. and I believe the legislative too. So, a number of us, my Office of the Controller, DPM, Department of Personnel Management, DOJ, although we all got together and we needed to get a hazard pay program together. Because we had certain considerations. We had the true definition of a hazard pay, which is your frontline worker. We also talked about essential workers. So our definition of essential workers, it was decided that keep in mind that this was back in March, a little after the government shutdown. We started working on this. To make, for simplicity purposes, we ended up using the definition of essential employees. So we started off with the executive order, and the executive order is the one that said these various departments and divisions they are essential. So that was the beginning of who is essential. In that executive order, I believe there's language in there that says a division director can declare who is essential as well as the president via the executive order. So and then obviously the frontline workers are included as essential employees. So for simplicity purposes, that's what we chose as those that are eligible, because some of the other considerations we went on was what does actual hours work mean? Does that mean you actually come to work, or are you still essential wherever you're located? Those are some of the considerations we discussed, and that went into drafting up a special duty pay program. So as you can imagine, around that time, this was the CARES Act. So since that time, some of the other things we have to do also is to make sure that the policy that we have meets the requirements of the CARES Act as well. So that's where the payroll support program, we had to make some of those language in there cross-reference so that we are able to use CARES Act funding. So I just want to make that clear. So since then, in addition to those programs that were deemed essential in the President's executive order, then there are other divisions and departments. As long as the division director approves and says, yeah, you're essential, then anybody who's essential can be eligible for the special duty pay. The other component of it is a person has to actually work. So if you're non-essential and you're staying at home and you're not required to work, you're on administrative leave, then you're not eligible for special duty pay. Although since that time, some of the things in our office that we've tried to do is prioritize some of those front lines. The one you were talking about, a front line. So we pretty much prioritize some of those early on. On a daily basis and on a bi-weekly basis, we pay those out. And I know I've gotten questions about, whether we can speed up the process and so forth, but through our biweekly payroll system, we pay as many of those as we can. So the reason why also is what that means is we run it through another process, our AP process, for instance, instead of our payroll process. Because these are payroll related, we have to run them through the biweekly payroll process. So I just want to make that clear as well. So Otto, I think your last question on the federal funded programs. In terms of the most of the programs, if they're federally funded from whichever federal program is funding them, they do have provisions for hazard pay. So we made sure that those are in place, and that way they're not having any problems with their funding and support. So Otto, that's where the problem can become, you can't double dip with CARES funds. So if you're already have enough to budget and to pay out of your federal funding, another federal funding source, that can happen. So the general rule is that you can't double dip, like your usual federal fund award. You can't get a special duty pay and then turn around and get CARES money to pay you twice. So that doesn't work that way. So the sooner we get the special duty pay business unit up, the better, because then if we could directly pay special duty pay out of a business unit, then that helps alleviate a lot of pressure on the programs and shuffling their budgets, and then it helps our office because we're not doing double the work. So I think I answered questions. I can go back to Delegate Shanale Key Ellen question on CPMD. I did get a status report regarding the capital project for CPMD, and it looks like there originally was budgeted 2 million in a particular business. We have actual expenditures of a little over $1 million, 75,000 in encumbrance, and then budget available is to little over 900,000, $906,154. I don't know if that answers the question too. So I think that's all I have. So not that I don't get that. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Controller. For that, let me go ahead and go on down back to the lineup. Honorable Vince James, where's yours?
Yat is dan snelle. Ado dan Shekhasinko. Kodo dan Shabes na Andishkedo Listo. Okay, I think today ya a Kodo email and not regarding scheduling of a meeting. So with that, out of this, I would like to know when you're available for a teleconferencing, and then who your immediate supervisor is. The reason why I say this is because I emailed you on June 18th, did a second follow-up on June 20th, did a third follow-up on June 24th, and finally you replied on July 2nd. But on that, I asked again on when you're available to do a teleconference. And as of today, I haven't received a email or confirmation of when you're available to due to scheduling teleconference.
One moment, please. You will be connected.
In regards to the Dreamcatcher's representatives that we were informed of among many of my other colleagues here. So that's number 1 and 2. Number 3 is the UUFB chapter emergency funds. What is the status on that? What is the balance on that? Number 4, BIA and 638, CPS and social service, those funding. What is the status on that, and what is the balance on those, and why is there large balances in these BIA and 638 account? Number 5 is what is the balance in regards to the $4 million emergency funds that we allocated once this pandemic started? So if you can share that information with us. Number 6 is the donations that were given to President Naz. Where is that going, and what is the balance on those donations that have been given to OPVP to use those funds through this pandemic? I believe we haven't been shared of that information as well. Last, my 7th one is in regards to essential worker. You just got done talking about it. I really don't understand the criteria, the guidelines that you just explained, but yet we made an amendment over the weekend that we could pay Navajo individuals possibly with $1,500. And they're not even working. Nobody's working, but we're going to still issue that $1,500 to these individuals. But on the other hand, the true frontline workers, you have this strict guidelines that they have to be at their work site in order to get the hazard pay. It should not be in that concept. The reason why I say that it's a case-by-case issue. Each individual recovers differently, and some of them have gone beyond the 14 days to recover. Some of them have to take oxygen back with them, back to their homestead after they're released from the hospital. And slowly they're recovering, and some of them are going beyond 60 days to recover. And if you're saying that we can't pay them the hazard pay, and reality they got exposed to COVID-19 at work site, just does not make sense. So that's my 7th one. Thank you. Going back on mute, reserve the rest of my time. Mr. Hat.
Hey. With that, Honorable James, you are at reserve time with 56 seconds. Moving on down, Honorable Elmer Brigade.
Good morning, Speaker. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good morning, each and everyone. If you too, Christmas, around the Situdo, Miss Kirk, Kahado, Aro, Juno, Negation, Henry, though. Called your Bakian, I think you're the only division directors and also the leaders of the Navajo Nation, the Negation Yatki, I really appreciate that. I don't know that. My question directly goes to the COVID, the CARES funding, the condition. You said that all projects that are allocated for this funds, with this expenditure plan by Nikagi, and has to be spent by December 30, 2020. Just in nature, that including the construction has to be completed by 12/30, 2020. Then nature, even as you go to continue the question more likely. So that means that this project has to be construction ready, and then it has to be shovel ready. So that means that if the auditor comes around from the U.S. Treasury Department, they can probably look for any document that would say that from a architecture or from one of the construction from the construction document that would say that this project was construction ready and this was shovel ready. So the inspector probably or the auditor will refer to that document. So okay. And I just keep all this. I know you said something about essential employees to get their special pay. There's some people that I've been getting some emails on it. I don't know how either the tribal employees they're coming around to like wellness center so although they're more they come around and they don't want to deliver then they tell me that this is what we do for special pay. We should be considered special the benefits of special pay we should be considered. Don't know but I don't know who's really talking or really advocating for the chapters, especially the certified chapters. So we've seen them. They went through all their funding for that 25,000. Yeah, and they went beyond that to continue that. The pandemic is still continuing. Even I don't know they're taken into other funds to try to extend the service for the community. So the outcome is like that. Tistos like that. So right now, even the chapter official or being truck drivers and Lido, the chapter official here are taking care of all the weekends. They go to Jericho, they go to other Indian wells. Holding water at the southwest part of the reservation is like that we very during this time each year, every year, annually is like that. They will go through this drought. Right now, so how can, as a chapter and as a delegate, the one that we know are here, that I think that I don't think nobody from their area, from their Window Rock, other the houses of what goes on daily here. Even can as a leader from here, can we request that which program and which program that should be essential and to get that special pay? What can it be done? So that will be my second question, though. Reserve my time, Speaker.
Elmer Brigade, you actually have run out of time. Moving on down, Honorable Slater. And then I'll come back to you, Madam Controller.
Speaker, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you, Madam Controller. My only question right now is, what can you say to preview the concept of spending CARES Act funding for eligible expenses under the general fund for the FY21 budget?
And if you have a ballpark, and can discuss that matter a little bit more. I reserve my time, Speaker. Thank you.
Reserve your time at 4:40. Let me go back to you, Madam Controller.
That's a CPMD question.
Oh, is it my turn now? Adish Nanas?
Oh.
Okay. So Otto Delegate Vince James, Ade Bin Naidin Kidiki. You were saying that I'm not being responsive on a certain meeting. So right now, I believe you're referring to some individuals that have previously reported to Budget and Finance. Essentially, they had certain products that they were pushing at the time. And so that kind of puts me in a certain situation where I'm not good at listening to pitches, people pitching us. I feel like if we need services and goods or whatever, we call them, because a lot of times it takes up my time. And I understand they're Navajos, they're entrepreneurs and so forth. As far as I can tell, the services that they were offering up to the Navajo Nation, it is not on an institutional level like the Navajo Nation that I'm charged with. It is more on a retail level in terms of the products that they were soliciting. So I'm sorry if you felt like, we needed a meeting and so forth. Just so you know, prior to you coming to me asking for a meeting, I've addressed it the best way I could, knowing that they are soliciting certain services on a retail level. There are things that the nation can do, possibly, but it wasn't my office. And I was approached about it prior to your approach. And I tried to, send them to who I thought they should be talking to, and whether those other programs wanted to talk to them or not, that's up to them. But I really feel like if there's any consideration for me in terms of, looking to them for services, usually I tell people there's a process involved. We are a government. We do have a request for proposal mechanism, and that's how the government gets its business, either sole source or RFP process. That's the procurement process, and we have all those in place. I am aware of the type of services that they previously were soliciting, and that is what I stated in my email. I said I referred it to a couple of places, and whether the other programs wanted to listen to them, that's up to them. So, so I just have that response. I mean, if you still want me to listen to them, I can, but I do get very busy. And like I said, soliciting businesses for goods and services, whether they're Navajo entities or not, they do get cumbersome, and I'd rather do work. And if I'm wanting to get services or so forth, I do that through, procurement process. So that's, what I have. So regarding the emergency, you can email me, continue to email me, and we can talk about that. regarding your first and second question, Otto, your third question was the chapter emergency balance. Do you have anything? We're looking into those balances. Keep in mind, in regards to our OOC, our responsibility, we have our certified chapters have their own financial system. Although the ones that aren't certified, we grant them the money so we can track those through FMIS, through DCD, So we have made some payments. I recall our office processing a lot of those payments. So we're working on getting those numbers, and maybe while I'm answering some of the other questions, we can have those numbers. Otto, your number 4 question, BIA 638 accounts. Why are there large balances? I just want to, per our funding requirements, we do operate on a first in, first out basis. And so, especially as to BIA, we are on what we call a FIFO basis, first in, first out. So essentially we're behind as far as expending money. That's the best way I can describe it, because we're spending, let's say, FY 19 dollars, and we're in FY 20. So you'll see, the sooner we expend those dollars, the sooner we, catch up. But that's all a programmatic issue. So I just want to make everyone aware of how that works. And then in terms of number 5, your question, the 4 million. And I'm pulling that out because there is a reporting mechanism, which is the FMIS. We use the FMIS as our financial system. Otto, in terms of the transactions, I do know that on the command center, we've given them the authorization to use our P card to expedite the payment method. And so the P card obviously takes a month to download and then code the correct account to be charged. And then we have our usual month in closing. So what I'm saying is there's a time lag from the time these transactions occur. So when you look into the FMIS system, it may not be reflective as far as real-time transactions. Yellow hair, I think you need to be on mute, Ishash Zeta. So the latest that I got regarding the 4 million, just talking to the command center, they have, out of the 4 million of the UUSB, they've expended $936,352. Auto. The other thing is what we call the open commitment. Basically, those are your open POs and so forth, and contracts. It's a little over 2 million. It's $2,083,575. Auto Yitzhiki budget balance available, and this was as June 18th, 2020. So there's a little bit of a timing on this one as well. $980,071.89. So that's the latest report that I have. So some of the things they're working on is a contract for laundry services, also for ambulatory service, security guard. So those are some of the things they're working on regarding the amounts that are remaining for their alternative care site. They also have some emergency assistance regarding their food donations. So they're working with nutritionists and so forth per the CDC recommendations. They are trying to await the frontier bills that are over at NTU, and so those are some of the information I have from the command group regarding the 4 million. Otto, your number 6 question on donations given to President Nez, regarding the non-monetary donations, the command group is the group that has more information on that. Office of the Controller, monetary donation, we're able to track that. The command group, I believe, they would be more suited to answer those non-monetary questions. They keep track of the current inventory, but I'm not sure how that's going. We do the online payment, and I do have the July 16th numbers, and online payment to give $2,140,944.70. Through the command center in Department of Health website, audit payment. Auto the Controller's Office, we get checks in via the mail and so forth. So auto wire transfers, and some of these wire transfers are certain dollar amounts. To date, $3,609,790.31. So with the online payments and the checks and wires that have come to our office, the total comes out to $5,735,735. $5,750,735. This 5.7 million doesn't include the NHA was going to be paying about $1 million on behalf of the nation as far as expense. It does not include the NAPI. They submitted $1 million that was considered a dividend payment that goes back to the general fund. So those two amounts are not in the 5.7 million. Keep in mind the donations, we did set up a separate bank account, so it doesn't go into our other bank accounts. It's a separate bank account. So per CJY-52-20, we need the expenditure plan, so that way we can get emergency management to deploy those donation dollars. Essential employees. So the way it works, and this might partially answer Delegate Bigay Adonaitis Kidigi. I think the essential employees and the special duty pay is more stemming from the personnel policies manual. Personnel policies manual is the one that authorizes the payment of what we call hazard pay. Auto, so essentially, as I mentioned earlier, how can we make it as simple as possible, because we discuss all of the various scenarios. So the best way was to go with the executive order and the definition of what essential employees are. So the start of that was the executive order, and in the executive order, it named certain the divisions and so forth. Auto, per the executive order, I believe, we said, or we are just following that to say, okay, any division director can deem themselves essential. Obviously, they manage their division, and if they're being asked to work and to provide services during a government shutdown, they're in that position to make the call. So that's how we define essential employees. Auto, the way the special duty pays is usually done is you have to go by some sort of mechanism where you pay someone above and beyond what their base pay is. So so that's how it works. And so I don't know if there's any misunderstanding on how it works regarding, a hazard pay. It's equivalent to, I would say, overtime. For example, that's where you'll hear these terms such as time and a half, 1.5, pay, the 1 meaning your base pay, and the 0.5 is your overtime or your special duty pay. So that's how it works. It's not, we don't currently have anything for people that are positive and so forth. So the hazard pay is for additional pay incentives because you're on the front line, because the conditions under which you're being asked to work is hazardous, and therefore you should get compensated for that. So that's where the mechanism is put in place, similar to overtime, to say, okay, you have a base pay and we'll pay you above that, a rate of some sort. So that's how it works, which is different, totally different than individual assistance that we were talking about the other day, your financial assistance program. For example, individuals that, as a result of COVID-19, we can use CARES Fund for financial assistance program where, there's an eligibility criteria or a means test, and based on those, you can give individuals assistance, so like utility assistance or just straight up general financial assistance, medical assistance, and so forth. Those are all individual programs for financial assistance. And so we're talking about special duty pay, which is obviously connected to someone being incentivized to do their job at the front lines, or you're essential and you're paying someone above and beyond what their pay rate is, as opposed to a federal financial assistance program where you're paying someone assistance payment. So, and that could be individual. So those are two different things. Moving on to Delegate Elmer Begay, projects. So I do get a lot of questions on the CARES Fund. CARES Fund. The way to think of these funds, number one, they are federal financial assistance funds. So they are not they are restricted. They are considered restricted. Not only in the terms of the CARES Act legislation, which is federal law, but also the Treasury guidance. They're not telling us all at once what we need to do. Sometimes the language is broad, but then they'll come back and clarify things. So that is the environment in which we're working. The three criteria under the federal law says it has to be necessary and to meet the pandemic COVID-19. That's the number one. Number two, I believe the language, and I don't have the exact language, but it must have not already been budgeted for. And number three, the period that it covers is March 1st and December 30th. Those three, like in terms of projects, we have infrastructure projects. Everybody knows that, we need water, we need broadband, we need, power. So there's no argument about that on that end. But it's the other two, for example, already budgeted. If I don't been I don't base of Treasury already budgeted, so those are the hard questions that we have to look at, and we have to take a risk on it. If leadership says we are still going to go forward with it, then now we have to face the consequences. Well, we have audit findings. Well, we get asked to pay those monies back. Those are the consequences. So, because that's the second criteria, is it already budgeted? And what does that mean? The other third criteria is, are these projects, what does that mean? Does that mean these projects have to get done by December 30th? In terms of those questions, the Treasury did send out guidance. They did say, your period of performance is this time frame, and if what incurred means is your goods have to come in by this date, you have to receive the goods. If it's services, you have to get your services performed by this date. That's what they're saying. Anita, they gave us a time frame. You have 90 days to make payment. So if you get your goods and your services by December 30th, then you have 90 days to pay the bill. So especially if you're working with federal funds, because that's how these grants and federal funds work. So those are what we call liquidation period for those 90 days. So it's really critical because the federal government, Treasury, they will come back and they will say, when did you receive the goods? If it's a project, then the project has to be complete by this day. So, based on no dagi, based on yasana sonse, not the kasha, so those are some of the questions in terms of the guidance. So the guidance is and the federal law drives how you spend these dollars. So in terms of, as we all know, the nation does receive other federal funding. So we are already on high risk. We're already being asked on some of these other federal funds that we have audit findings. We need to correct some of those things. So a audit ye non-hinal insa. So those are all important considerations in terms of how to utilize these funds. So in terms of special duty pay, I believe your example was a wellness center delivery who's considered for special duty pay. Anita Bahashnet. So in terms of who is eligible and it applies to the essential employees. And in the beginning, as I mentioned, there was an executive order. These divisions and departments were essential. The division directors have the authority to declare who's essential as well if they weren't listed. So that's what we go by, and we incorporate that into the special duty policies. So as long as they're either on the executive order or their division directors are deeming them essential, then those employees, if they're deemed essential, are eligible for the special duty pay. The other criteria is there has to be a budget. So there's no, as of yet, there's no pot of money that says you can use this. So early on, a lot of the programs, and I have no problems processing payments for them. For example, public safety, they deserve it. We all know they're on the front lines. The problem was they have to shuffle their budget around, and that's still occurring. So, for example, some of the programs and departments, they are eligible for special duty pay, but they don't have a budget. So that's a problem. So they can't pay their people out unless they have the source of funding. So with the recent passage of the $21 million for a special duty pay, the sooner we get that up and going, the better, because then we're not, we're paying people and we're not reworking things. So that's important. The other thing that is also a criteria is, as I mentioned before, on special duty pay, you have to have work. You can't be on admin leave, staying at home, and not doing any work, and then ask for special duty pay. So you have to be working. So we track those hours as well. And so that's where I'm saying there are people that are submitting, going back retroactively and requesting special duty pay, and if their numbers on their request doesn't jive with the numbers that are on their timesheet, then those are problems. That's where I'm saying if we have to send documents back, those numbers are not correct. So that's what's going on with the special duty pay. I think your last question was chapters. If they have no monies, I think you were asking about that. So, I believe, I'm not sure if chapters have any allowable expenses. If they have certain expenditures that they want to incur to on their end, if there's any allowable expenses they could use out of the CARES, then, because I don't know what kind of expenditures they would have. Obviously, they would know better their community. I know I will share that my office were anticipating having chapters, coming through and requesting CARES Fund, assistance or CARES Fund requests. So some of the things, I know my office has done a couple of presentations at the request of a couple of delegates. And as a result, we were preparing some of those presentations because some of the questions were, how do we know what's allowable or not allowable under the CARES Fund? So we were anticipating a lot more of those questions. And so we were preparing to do some, whether it's a webinar type presentation to kind of shed some light on any type of request that's coming down the pipeline. Those are some of the thoughts that our office had in terms of educating for those chapters that have needs and that can be allowable under CARES funds. So I just want to share that. I think I addressed the various questions. So
Thank you, Madam Controller. I'm gonna go ahead and go back to the floor. I have Honorable Wilson Stewart up next. Honorable Stewart, you there?
Yes. Good morning, Phil, and good morning, colleagues.
Good morning.
Madam Controller, so I have got a husband to when he's Queensland. Don't he'll host now, so don't staff and the game call. I get a Nandish kid, Minach the FEMA chapters that reports that had that from April or from March to April, first round then again. ADG so had that no Dr. Yellman Bishop that Division of Community Development. Okay, had that Liao Yahada so Yahada Nelo AA based on Lenigi ish our chapter budget non tatole. Then and this kidigi a yajo kodo chapters on Lenigi solid waste either that than Lenigi the plan the whole operational plan community members Hashin Sabo a charge a day there's a discount for those that are registered there out of the Nadangi they pay different price. Based on Lenigi because of the COVID-19 the charge a day either all visit a let though the quick gallons the quick bags turning at the let a quaggy Nandish Kishnala a FEMA fund dangi ish chapter but not nistole through that FEMA report is positive. Aro Sagina Kwadogi the Quillishin by Yan the special duty paid Linigi Joe A I you the sits on that the yo bikitish kinta Quaggy just federal funds dangi Aro K account that Agita. That based on they operate under a different thing. As in Navajo Nation, there are different guidelines for those accounts to be used. Navajo Nation, President, executive order, so administrative leave, these federal funds again. AD do they still qualify for that? Auto supervisor done Linigi. So administrative leave other employees to that case. They go and charge them leave Aro Kurogi so Nanagi veterans dangi so the best of the legislature at the there's two legislations like Saasha a veterans on Linigi $1,000 registered veterans on Linigi with Hado Neto listing no ko Quaggy it's going through the legislative process. Also Nanagi housing a non acquisition Hadigishin as from the final legislative process for funds and then give a young can get exhibits beyond that or was it in your report then DDG so a non $4 million so a police departments but according has but personal protection equipment hey that even not although BIA number AI president, which is Sunday, a Korea OOC, the souls on hashing out account yard, the let the one that I gave us a part of the channel. A Korea, console even on this kidolation. I can.
Thank you, Honorable Stewart. That moving on down, Chairman Daniel So.
Ja, det är snedare lite. Men Craig. Navajo Nation Council delegates, the speaker, the legislative staff, either Madam my question is regarding the master trust, the components of that master trust. The interest rate or the interest funds that had been gathered over the years, my understanding was some of the enterprises used it for, they used the Navajo Nation Master Trust as a bank. And I'm wondering, can you come up with a spreadsheet? Navajo Oil and Gas, they received a loan. What was the source of those? Was it the interest rates from the permanent trust? Was it the interest rates from the land acquisition? The same way for Navajo Nation Gaming, as well as NECA, NTUA, Navajo Arts and Crafts Enterprise. And if those loans occurred and came out of, let's say, Handy Capable Trust Fund or any of the other funds, Land Acquisition Trust Funds, are they current on repaying those loans? And if they've been given deferred time to start paying, did you make note of that? And who has basically been paying down the principal of those loans? I think it's well publicized that Navajo Nation Gaming Enterprise basically is only paying the interest and not paying down the principal. So I'd like to find out which other enterprises have loans and what the source of those loans were. That would be the part that I'm concerned about. The other aspect is we appreciate how you've explained the various aspects, but for this part, I'm really wanting to know. That would be the extent of my questions, Mr. Speaker. Madam Controller, thank you for coming before the committee and taking your time to answer some of the repetitive questions. And you haven't tired of it. And if the committee or the council could us understand that some of our questions are repetitive. And if we would just listen, and we would get farther along in this particular report. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, back to you. Reserve the balance of my time.
That Honorable Daniel, 50 seconds on reserve time. Yeah, right here. Moving on down, Honorable Yellow Hair, and then I'll come back to you, Madam Controller.
Speaker, I got my name in the queue too.
Oh, we got you. Well, Yellow Hair. Going once, going twice. Honorable Yellow Hair. Honorable Yellow Hair, can you hear us?
I can hear you, but I can't hear you. Can't hear me.
Okay, I can hear you now.
Okay. Speaker. Out on the Senate only 24 councilmen, 20. Out of Korea, Neta is on the not the base. Dealing with on the pro one net not on the clinic out on the core English with best open controller Navajo Nation con his not Korea not Skidea upon Yashua Korea only chain also the earlier not as Skidea undesignated reserve from thousand not as kid. And the way July 13 at Itan DC that it by out of British other no hot be kunde Craig able cardinal social report. Did it undesignated reserve fund a yakat not so the cardies or supplemental area outskirts 7,463,252 cargo. Korea on July 21st was cut. None of these these stats are not sure. These are active non-PEC federal fund report on audit. They are not cons of the final dialect and the Saudi Quay should not us. This change in that desk. But 11 in that all you based on which order federal fund to all you in the internal. As a report on exhibit D. Each judicial branch could use a peso, a total about a bank in the 1,830,159 because the dish GDA 127,199 because I think they budget balance 1,702,960 because Craigie but I know that this Lana Khayda 2011-2012 program cannot spend the money to your either non-having in cannot go down in 2012 go suddenly teen these are very controlled what's suddenly teen in the share is confidential but if you are not one either she that they brings back on that one when so not that kid you're not a kid or at least I'm trying to look for some information that is very enough. This email with insurance, charging Shiana. I would like to request Mr. Damon to save my remaining time. Thank you very much. Yeah.
I'll be over here 2 minutes, reserve time. Write that down. Don't forget 2 minutes. Let me go back to you, Madam Controller.
Ado, Speaker, and then members of the 24th Navajo Nation Council, Ade bin Daidos Kidiki, Ado, Artena, Naiti Kide, Delegate Slater, Ado, respond and they slada la, United Kidiki, I believe the question was, Halit out CARES Fund A3 don't eat that's for the next fiscal year 2021 do we have some numbers that's United Kidnet in fact in terms of expenditures that we've already expended, for example the 4 million Anita UUSB in lay Department of Health, Command Center, Bait Nalanki, those are expenditures that we can reimburse ourselves. So I call it the low-hanging fruit. Some of the other expenditures that we can do that with currently is the payroll and special duty pay. Payroll, we've been expending payroll since March 1st, and the applicable payroll expenditures would be the ones that are general funds. General funds, they begin the Ilihagi payroll 638. So as you can imagine, on the 638, the numbers are high. So I know I did a written report, and I can explain that at that point in time. So usually the payroll is the largest amount of expenditures that we've incurred that should be allowable. That is allowable, and that is the reason why our office has put together a payroll support program. So if you put that program together, it can be allowable to. So in terms of the expenditures that we going forward for the rest of this fiscal year, the payroll should be allowable as well, and then as well as going into the first quarter of the next fiscal year. So we're trying to accumulate the amount. We do have estimates. As you can imagine, just so you know the amount of information we're dealing with, every 2 weeks we have a payroll run, and we have anywhere between 5 to 7 million is the total amount of the nation's payroll. So out of those 5 to 7 million, general funds those are the figures we need to get for every pay period starting from March 1st and all the way, whether we need to estimate all the way to the rest of the fiscal year, for the next fiscal year for first quarter. So those are all eligible and allowable expenditures for funds, for the CARES funds. So I believe I gave some numbers on the written report, and I want to say it's 40 million that we've incurred so far. We still have a few more months for this fiscal year, the first quarter, Nana. So those are all allowable, and what that means is it actually could help if we supplement our current year fiscal year with CARES funds, then what that means is it frees up the UUSB dollars as well. So I know earlier I said maybe our future UUSB dollars might not be as high as right now. And so freeing up some of these dollars for the current fiscal year only helps us. Next fiscal year, budgets we can supplement our budgets using CARES fund to the extent we can for the first quarter eligible expenditures. So Delegate Stewart, FEMA, whether any reimbursement goes back to the chapters. I'm not aware of some of those expenditures regarding the FEMA reimbursements. I am aware of the FEMA reimbursement that goes through the command center. In general, those things, we do get reimbursement up to 75%. Although the way it works is we do need in order to draw down any fee, 75% of FEMA reimbursement, we do have to set up essentially a K account so that we can draw it down to those accounts. Although in general, what we can do after that is we can distribute that. I'm not too sure about the particulars in this case, whether we're able to do it. This is the first time I've heard about chapters having expenditures that's part of the FEMA reimbursement, unless I don't know any other activity that I'm aware of where the chapters are using the expenditures, and then we get the FEMA reimbursement. But in general, that's how it works. So we draw it down to an account, and then from there we can disseminate it. As I understand, that's the process. So Otto, I think on the special duty pay, in general, positions that are federally funded, those, if they have the budget, then we do make sure that the various funding agreements call for hazard pay. Although from there, we can use those existing budgets to pay hazard pay to an employee. What that requires is a lot of shuffling of budgets and so forth, and that can be a problem, which is probably why some of the programs may not be submitting their special duty pay. So you'll hear constituents saying, I want to get special duty pay. So it may become a budget issue. It is correct that you can't double dip just because you get a special duty pay using other funding sources, other federal funding sources. Then you can't get special duty pay using CARES fund. So that's the double dipping situation. So that would be prohibited. But that's not to say you can just outright pay special duty pay straight from CARES funds. So I just want to make that clarification as well. I haven't looked at the particular draft legislation on the veterans. It sounds like talking about a financial assistance specifically for the veterans in terms of the CARES fund. In general, those financial assistance programs, somebody needs to go on mute again.
I'm trying to find them.
I lost my train of thought. Veterans program, if there is a specific financial assistance program contemplated using CARES fund in general, though, as you can set up those financial assistance program, the only thing is to make sure, of course, you go through all the requirements. It has to be COVID-19 related. The other thing is to do a means test and eligibility criteria, those types of things. Although in terms of the 4 million BIA, audit BIA, they 4 million. Although there was a little bit of going back and forth regarding the budgets. Budgets and I believe since that time, the budget has been set up. And as of July 10th, the program just needs to start expending those dollars. Before they can expend, the budget has to be set up. So they should be able to start spending, and I believe it was set up for PPEs, special duty pay, is that I recall. Otto, Chair Daniel So, AI United Kid Master Trust, being used as a bank for the enterprises. I'm not aware of any type of what we call a direct investment. The only one that we have is the Navajo Nation Gaming Enterprise. As you know, these are things that were prior to my time. There's a long history with the gaming and the master trust portfolio and the investment. So in the report that we provide to council on the last page where it talks about the master trust, we talk about all the other asset allocation combined. That's essentially, the investment, auto. We also, on the bottom of the master trust area, it talks about the gaming. So that will give you an idea from how the gaming loan is allocated to the different funds, including the permanent fund. So EDEA, as far as I'm aware, that's the only quote-unquote direct investment into one of our enterprises. That's not to say that in the past, at least during my time, that I've been approached by enterprises. I've been approached by Navajo Arts and Crafts. I've been approached by NOG to invest. For example, NOG they did have some financing and they wanted a preferred equity investment through our portfolio. As of today, none of those things have panned out. I know Navajo Arts and Crafts has approached us on, help funding some of their expansion and so forth. But as of today, those things have never come to fruition. So right now, all we have as a direct investment is the Navajo Nation Gaming Enterprise. And as stated, the history is such that in the beginning, it wasn't always a quote-unquote a direct investment. It was treated differently. And as the enterprise has grown and had added locations, ultimately, it resulted in what we call a direct investment under the policies, and then the allocation, which you can see on the report, which funds, including the permanent fund, participates in that investment. So there was a refinance back in May 2018. To me, as a chair of the investment committee, it was a little controversial at the time, but I feel like it was our fiduciary duty to come up with a refinancing because we needed to ensure that we get our principal back, repayment of principal. So that still continues to be should be our utmost concern when it comes to gaming. I believe the balance is I can't see, but I think it's 192 million that is outstanding. And so I know the other day there was an interest for gaming to be funded. I feel like if they are considered for the CARES Act, because they do have some allowable expenditures, if they get the help, then that helps the nation in terms of its debt obligation to us. So and most anything else I will mention in terms of the enterprises, the CSN funds, there is currently a loan to NTUA out of the CSN funds regarding some of the projects. those terms were comparable to a federal program of a USDA rural program. Those are the types of terms that we have. We don't make a lot of interest, and we have a longer amortization period. That's with NTUA as well as gaming. We do have another part grant, part loan program for their C-stores. That's another one out of the CSN funds that we have. And then anything else, a lot of grants going to our enterprises. So that's my response. Otto, Shazada, Delegate Yellow Hair. The UUSB, as I mentioned before, it does take some calculations. We have to get a little bit into the audit process to, ensure that we have enough in the fund balance to make those audit adjustments. So there's a little bit of timing to those things. And as I mentioned, because of the pandemic, our audit schedule is not as it usually is. But I anticipate we'll have some an updated UUSB here shortly. Otto, BIA and the judicial branch. We do run into the issue of our external funds, so we don't use it, Shasta. And some of you are aware of what goes on. I would say sometimes, given a choice of using restricted dollars as opposed to unrestricted dollars, our program sometimes tends to go with general funds, which is unrestricted. A good example is our Daltech. Sometimes Daltech, I'm being told that Daltech is running out of money, but if my staff looks into it, they have funds that they haven't touched from the state of New Mexico, for instance. And the reason being might be, I don't know if there's additional reporting involved or taking inventory of food. Those are the requirements of our external restricted funds. And so those types of activity do occur. Sometimes those types of things happen. The other thing regarding BIA funds is, as I mentioned before, when they expend using the 638 funds, there's a time lag. We haven't caught up with our expenditures. And so those things need to happen. So on a reporting basis, it looks like we're not spending, but we're spending last year's dollar. So those are some of the things that happen. I believe that's, those are my responses at this point.
Go on down. On the bottom, so you are up next.
Thank you very much, Madam Controller, for your report. Ado, Ani, I agree with Chairman. So, if especially related to the special duty pay. Ado abkidi ay bahazniye and I do agree that it has to be well vetted, just due to the fact of that if it's not vetted, we're not the Navajo Nation will not be liable for that, and that's something that we can stand to say and protect. To say that, yes, we use these CARES dollars in according to what the policies and recommendation and procedures that was set forth by the U.S. Treasury. One area that I wanted to expand on is that maybe if we could start getting information related to how our mandatory set aside is allocated now, related to the dollars that comes in from the sales tax and or the tax, the 18%. For years and years, these set asides, is it time that we need to start looking at reallocating the percentage ratio to other areas? Because it is very I'm very interested in your report, and it's really troublesome to see that you have like the senior citizen trust fund on the last page for the senior citizen. It's not really gaining much money. We have the trust fund for our handicapped citizens. Then so we have 12% going back into the reinvestment of the to service to service and add more money to the permanent trust fund right now. And then we have, I believe, 4% going to the veteran trust fund. And then the remaining amount, I believe, to the chapter and whatever the other 2% goes to. But what I'm getting to is that is it time that we need to start reshuffling that percentage ratio to start increasing certain other trust funds that we have, because our handicapped citizens and our senior citizen are, and then we have the scholarship, also the 1982 scholarship trust fund, and so we could start increasing those numbers. The number 2 is that should we start setting a cap on how much interest that or how much additional revenues that we put in to the into a trust fund? For instance, the information you have provided to us, just basic general numbers, we have about 160 million inside the Veterans Trust Fund. Then we have $137 million in the Land Acquisition Trust Fund. But what I'm getting to is that is it time that we should start going into a direction to start beefing up other areas of our trust fund accounts that are in the Master Trust Fund, so that we could one day have how the Veteran Trust Fund services its veterans. One day that we could have this trust fund interest be utilized for our senior citizen programs out there, or for our handicapped citizen. Today, I haven't heard anything related to any disbursements from that trust fund account to our handicapped citizen to improve their lives. Then our scholarship also. If we could get those ratios readjusted so that we can serve those other areas. The other thing is that I believe is that the carryovers. Is it time to do away with carryovers here? So and what is your stance on that, to do away with carryovers? That way the carryover dollars will be implemented into the next fiscal year. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else on the board? So let me go back.
And to me, and Speaker.
Go ahead on Eugene. So go ahead.
Shehu, Yake, I just got a little question. A very simple one. It seems that I can understand, but I don't know if anybody can. Especially yesterday, I can't really. Controller, Shema, would it have been very simple if the Navajo Nation Council just direct to you, Controller, with the President of the Navajo Nation and the division directors to direct them to do what the Corbett Act says how to use it, and just give you guys the money and run with it and spend it? Would it have been better and faster? I was thinking about that. We had the teams that run around like you were saying. I had to teach these people how to use it and all this and that. Those would have been just, I don't know, you had nothing. I can't teach kids of this about council delegates and let the president run with it with you guys. You know how to use this and how to get rid of all this money, where to be used. I thought my husband, Nicole, I thought want to the face of Satan across the Navajo Nation, not just that what we're doing, all chapters of the project that I don't feel right about this. It's the people's money that's affected one way or another by this COVID-19. So I just feel that would have been really easy controlling that. You would have really controlled this money, and then with the president, with the legal counsel and division directors. These directors, some of them got doctor's degree. You said he could all what do you didn't own the project by me. So that's the question that it lingers inside me ever since we started. So so I not debate that this act it's been debated by Congress. So why we all keep on debating that. Thank you. That's my simple question. Thank you.
Okay, with that, we go ahead and go back to the controller. Kurt.
Speaker, Council, Navajo Nation Council, Kompen Daito Kidiki I think somebody asked a question on the chapter emergency. So I just want to answer that because I got the information in front of me. There was a total of 1,370,364. They have all been paid out to the chapters. Except for for the sanction sanction chapters, we made those adjustments, and so we from our office we did make those payments. The account balances we don't have access to that. Those should be at the chapter level, so we don't keep track of those balances. So either DCD or Auditor General, they have access to that information. Delegate right now we do have, in regards to the sales tax, we do have 16.666% that goes to the judicial public safety. 8.333% goes to the scholarship. 8.333% is the economic development fund. 16.666% goes to fire and rescue. So right now, the nation's bond that gets paid out of the judicial public safety. So so those are the changes that were made last. So we can put that on the report. I believe there was a change that was made regarding the non-retail sales. Those are a little bit hard to track because they have to do with the construction projects and so forth. So in terms of what you were asking, is it time to reshuffle? Right now, in my report, if you look at the first page, I believe it is Exhibit A. On the set aside. So we have what we call the projected revenue auto actual. You'll see what as the revenues come in auto set aside. So, for example, on the veterans, so far what's coming from veterans is $7.5 million. Auto permanent fund, 22.5 million. It's so far as of June 30th, it's been set aside. So auto, so those are the ones that are required by law to do the set aside. And then in terms of if whether it's time to reshuffle, either from the permanent fund, land acquisition trust, veterans trust, because I know perm fund is 12% out of the general fund revenues, auto land acquisition 2% set aside, auto veterans 4%. So I believe all three of them would require a referendum vote by the people to make any changes as to those percentages. That's what we understand it as such. So that would probably be a legal question, but I think that's how it works. So auto in general, I think it does make sense on an economic level to lay senior citizens do education do some of those funds handicap trust or senior citizens, so some of those educational. It does make sense at this point in time, but as I mentioned, it's probably a bigger question, bigger policy question than just our office. But so on a big picture level, so it does make sense. In terms of carryovers, it does impact at the end of the fiscal year. It does impact our closeout process. It does impact the UUFB calculations. So every time we authorize carryovers, just keep those in mind. It does have an impact on those numbers. Because there's carryovers, it takes a little bit longer. So Eugene So, delegate to Eugene So, in terms of whether there was a simpler process, I think one of the things to understand was at the federal level, they appropriated and they said, here's the intent. Although, as I understand, it was and so if you pay attention to what's happening outside of the nation here, a lot of these state and local governments are already they're in the process of deploying these dollars. So you'll hear about counties and cities putting up their financial assistance program. They'll say, we're going to help renters pay their rent, because they're behind. We're going to help people pay their utility payments, and so forth. And so in terms of other tribes, aside from the Navajo Nation, we have the Cherokee Nation, for example. They received $332 million, and they call their program a Respond, Recover, and Rebuild Plan. And I know a few people over there, one in particular, and they were telling me essentially they got they're a 3-branch like us, and they got their president and their council together, and they essentially just hacked out a plan, and this is the plan they came out with. They came up with a $100 million to restore their governmental revenue entities and their jobs. They have another $100 million for essential government functions. They have another $100 million to strengthen their community. And then I think the only extent of a project they're looking at is establishing an epidemiology center. And so that's what they did. And then we have Muskogee Creek. They got $282 million. They're funding their enterprise relief fund. They have an individual and family support program. Namely, that's their financial assistance program. They have 15% funding their healthcare services, and then they have some in a contingency fund. So those are a couple of, at least the next biggest recipient of these dollars using their funds in that way. So a lot of their plan, they if they have to give names to it, it's like Response, Recover, and Restore Plan, and pretty much geared towards essentially what is in the Treasury guidelines. I mean, all I can do is advise based on what I know, and I believe that these funds were, because it's a little interesting because they are considered externally restricted funds, so we're not used to that on a large scale, and so it is a little bit, it's almost like we're figuring this out as we go. But as far as my office is concerned, we try to advise on what are the ramifications of if we have audit findings or asked to pay these back. We do deal with audits on a daily basis, whether we're doing our single audits or any programmatic audits. So we are, that is our job, is to make everything audit ready so we can pass audits. And so this amount of money, those types of consideration is front and center, I would say. So, but we're here willing to work however way necessary to get these dollars out, not only in terms of payment-wise, but compliance-wise. It's a whole exercise on compliance, and however way we need to do it.
Immediate. Are you still there?
Yes.
So, hi, are you still there? So
Hello? Someone else is having a second phone call. Madam Clerk, sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
I think I'm pretty much done. So, not that I don't keep that.
Okay, thank you. That everybody else is accused. So let me go back to reserve time. Three minutes, 25 seconds. Honorable Helena.
Oh,